Hey there, Melaminah here. Welcome back to My Bikini Competition Journey. This is episode number 20, the 4 phases of bikini competition prep. So, until now, I haven't really done a whole lot of research into the whole bikini competition process or what to expect or really anything along those lines. I started this journey in April of 2022 and I basically just jumped in blindly. I decided that this was a goal that I wanted to achieve, and so I hired a coach and off I went. So now, another reason why I didn't really look a whole lot into what to expect along this journey was because basically once I made the decision to start this journey, my whole life decided to explode. So I started the journey in April, and then like 4 weeks later, my mom died, and then like 6 weeks later, my dad died, and then like 5 weeks later, I got married. So I had a little bit on my plate at that time. I was like a little bit distracted by a few other things. So I didn't even really think about researching anything or questions that I had about this whole process or anything like that. But happily, things are starting to settle down a little bit. And these kind of questions about what to expect and what this whole thing is like are starting to pop up. So I figured that when I was doing this research for myself, I would just share it with you all. So that's what we're going to talk about today. The 4 phases of bikini competition prep. So let me very first and foremost say that this is not like hard and fast. This is not something that everyone in the industry agrees to, like this exact specific 4 steps that I'm going to lay out. But what I did kind of do or notice is as I was doing some research, looking around, digging around on this topic, there was some like broad strokes that everyone sort of agreed to. And then it kind of seems like coaches move in and out of these different phases depending on what their client needs and when, and kind of where their client is at. So I'm also going to provide the links to the major articles that I pulled my information from today. I'll leave those in the resources section of the show notes. So let's dive in. So one of the things that was very, very prominent throughout my research was that the exact training and diet that someone will adhere to will vary wildly depending on their body shape, what their goals are. What their current body shape is, like where they're at when they first get started and as they progress, and then what their goals are, and then specifically what their competition goals are, because there are different categories that you can enter into when you do the competition. So let's take a closer look at the 4 phases. So just a rundown of them. The first one is the growth phase. The second one is shape and balance. And then the third one is fat loss. And the fourth one is peak conditioning, sometimes called peak week. My understanding is that the week prior to your show gets like really crazy, really hectic, and like a bunch of like mini goals, I would say, have to be met within that week. So by the way, the reason I'm looking down is I'm looking at the notes that I took. So anyways, let's take a closer look at each of these 4 phases. So that first one is growth. And in the growth phase, we're aiming to flesh out the muscles in the areas that might be lacking. So if someone already has a pretty developed upper body, but they're lacking in their lower body, then their coach will really put a lot of emphasis on building muscle in the lower body. And then generally this is accomplished by having split routines. So you would train the upper body on one day and then the lower body on different days. We don't really train especially in my programming, we don't really train the whole body, the total body, all on one day. We split it into upper and lower halves. And then this makes targeting the certain muscle groups a lot easier. And in the bikini category specifically, it's all about the booty, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, we train the booty a lot. Alrighty. So phase number two is what they call shape and balance. So once there's more muscle on the body to work with, the next thing we want to do is focus on creating a specific shape and balancing that out. So in the bikini category, again, it's all about the booty, but there's also kind of like an overall, like points that you would get. You would get overall points for that. So every phase is going to be highly customized to your needs, but even more so here. Because we're going to be balancing out what's going on in your body. We were talking about shape and balance, and every phase is going to be highly customized to each client, but even more so here, because not every athlete will train the same muscle group evenly. Not every large muscle group is going to be trained the same way. So for example, not every back muscle is the same, nor should every back muscle be used, depending on what areas you're trying to target and shape. So what your coach will do is train the best angles for your body and your shape. All right, and then moving on to phase number 3. So in phase number 1, we talked about growing muscle. In phase number 2, we talked about shaping and balancing your body. And then phase number 3 is fat loss. So we've been doing all this work to build this beautiful muscle. Now we need to shred some of the fat so that we can actually see that muscle. So it's time to show it off. Fat burning helps to lean you out and makes it easier to see the muscle that you've worked so hard to build. This is often done by reducing calories and increasing cardio, but we do want to preserve as much muscle as possible. So more than likely your diet will still include, enough protein to make sure that you maintain your muscle mass. All right, and then finally, the 4th category is peak conditioning. So this is done the week before your show. Sometimes it's also called peak week. That's what my coach calls it, peak week. And this is also highly individualized, just pretty much like the entire program that someone would be doing. It's the last ditch effort to make sure that you are ready for your show. So this might involve making some last minute tweaks to your diet, maybe some tweaks to your training, definitely changing your water intake, and it might include dialing in your sodium intake as well. So from what I read, most coaches do not recommend making huge last minute changes. It's just smaller things that you're dialing in. You don't want to start over your last week. I mean, you literally have like 7 days to be ready, to be show ready. So there is a second article that I'll include in the show notes in the resources section that goes into a lot of detail about peak week and a lot of like if-then kind of situations. So you can just check that out for yourself. I'm not going to go through each and every one of her points, but as far as what's going to happen on my peak week, I guess we will just have to stick around and find out together. So so those are the 4 categories or 4 phases of bikini competition prep that I kind of came up with based on the research that I did. And again, those were growth, shaping and balancing, fat loss, and peak conditioning during your peak week. So when I first reached out to my coach, not my direct coach, but the founder of the coaching programming that I am a part of, one of the things, anytime you get a coach, you have to apply to be on their team. And so during my application process, Coach Joe, he's the owner of Next Level Bikini Prep, told me this, and I'll just read you what he said in the email. He said, "It looks like you have good shape and structure for the sport, and you could do very well with the right guidance. We should be able to accept you into the program as long as you're okay following a flexible, by competition prep standards, but structured program. So for your body type, the starting point and your starting point, we would do what's referred to as recomp, which basically means keeping the calories just high enough to support your training and building your glutes, etc., the other muscles, etc., but low enough that you can gradually drop body fat at the same time. This should work better for you than going with distinct bulking and cutting phases. And then the process will be more linear as well, which is always less stressful. Once we have you pretty near stage ready, we can start to look at show dates." Because I had told him that I, didn't know exactly what date I was targeting, but definitely wanted to compete prior to going on our big honeymoon to Hawaii in April of 2023. So his estimate was about 8 to 10 months to be stage ready, assuming solid adherence, which makes me laugh at this point because my adherence has been anything but solid, given everything that's happened in my life in the last handful of months. So we'll see. I did get feedback from my coach from my last bi-weekly check-in, and she said I'm still on track and everything is looking great. So yay. All the adjustments that I've been making on the fly have been helping, or been working at least. So happy for that. So just to circle back to what Coach Joe said, it sounds like for me in particular, I'm not sure if this is how they treat all of their clients, but for me in particular, he was not going to do a very delineated growth, shape and balance, fat loss, and peak conditioning. For me, we're doing more of a blended phase. So we're doing kind of the growth and some fat loss all together at the same time. So I'm currently on 1,700 calories per week, 130 grams of protein, 160 grams of carbs, and 65 grams of fat. And so far, I've been building muscle just fine. It's actually getting really exciting. I can see a lot more coming in. And I'm not feeling starved, which is nice. And I am still kind of dropping weight a little bit, and then also mostly maintaining, especially with all of the other stuff going on. But I have noticed a little bit of a very gradual decrease as I've gotten back from our honeymoon and really gotten back into the swing of things. So with that, thank you so much for tuning in again to My Bikini Competition Journey. And today we talked about the 4 phases of bikini prep, which were growth, shaping and balancing, fat loss, and peak week. So if you found this helpful or interesting, make sure to give it a like and to subscribe so that you get notifications when I drop other videos. And feel free to share it with anybody else who might find this interesting or educational. Questions, comments, concerns, interpretive dances, go ahead and drop them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to answer all of that. And then again, I will put links to a couple of the major articles that I pulled information from in the resources section of the show notes. So thank you so much, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.